does it take to be one of America's hottest brands? Hello, my name is EJ Schultz, news editor at Ad Age, and we will answer that question on this edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast. Hottest Brands is an annual Ad Age feature published every summer, looking at the brands that are having a moment. And this is often as a result of smart marketing that has allowed them to break through the noise. And let's face it, there is plenty of noise these days. This year's list includes brands from across the spectrum. There is Cava, the Mediterranean fast casual brand, and Canva, the design platform. We also have pickles, Grillo's cracked the list, and ketchup, which is one of the foods sold by Smash Kitchen, the pantry brand co-founded by actor Glenn Powell. Our hottest list also includes NASA and NeeDoh, and New Yorkers will be happy that the Knicks made it. You can check out all 20 of the brands at adage.com, but for today's podcast, I want to focus on some of the marketing lessons we can take away from this year's crop of winners. And to help me do that, I want to welcome Ad Age senior editor Adrianne Pasquarelli, who helped put the list together. Hello, Adrianne.
Hi, EJ.
So over the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to review what some of the brands that made our list did right. And there are plenty of lessons that are applicable, I think, no matter how big your brand is or what industry you might play in. You wrote about some of these lessons at Ad Age. We published a story last Friday. So let's just kind of go through some of your takeaways. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is listen to feedback. Now that sounds like sort of obvious advice, but I think the way that some of our brands are listening to the consumers, they're doing it in some really interesting and compelling ways. And you highlighted a couple of those in your story. Do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, thanks for having me, EJ. So I'd love to talk about NeeDoh, which I think you're probably familiar with because you have a daughter and I have two daughters too. And it's that squishy toy that really went viral earlier this year. Were you familiar with it before this list?
You know, maybe my daughter, maybe here in Chicago, it wasn't as hot as in New York, but I definitely am familiar with it now for sure.
So it's been crazy. They are actually a 10-year-old brand, but because people started using these squishy toys, like doing ASMR with them on social media and documenting it on TikTok, then it started this flywheel of people looking to buy these NeeDoh, these squishies, and then they were selling out because the brand just had never seen such demand for it before. So there was like all this demand for it, all these things selling out, and they started receiving all this fan mail and they had some inventory issues and all this stuff. And so they were talking to me about how they were handling that situation. And it really came down to, like you said, listening to feedback from customers and also customers like consumers, but also their wholesale accounts like independent toy stores and that kind of thing. They said they've received so much fan mail that they had to hire employees just to like go through all these letters. That was like just this year. They told me that a lot of that is informing how they're thinking about product drops in the future and kind of how much inventory they're budgeting for. So it's like informing marketing and merchandise.
And I think you said in your story, the response was so overwhelming. The feedback they were getting, they actually hired people to just do this, just to listen, right?
Right. So they had a few people just going through like actual letters that they're getting. I mean, I think maybe because they sell to children as well as teens and adults. Like let's be clear, a lot of the people posting on TikTok are not child age, but they're getting actual fan mail, like snail mail. So they have people kind of going through that and going through all the comments on social media and all of that as well. And that's informing how they're doing marketing and kind of understanding how much to buy. So they just released these advent calendars like this week or last week, July, for Christmas. And that's way earlier than last year. And they ordered double the amount just because they knew how many people would be, they're hoping that they finally found a balance to avoid selling out again, which they did last year.
I think this speaks really to what we've been noticing now for a while and just such the importance of community building if you're a brand. And if you're a consumer, you want to know, you want to feel like you're being heard, right? If you make a suggestion about a new product, if you're complaining about a product, I mean, people have been giving this feedback forever, right? It's nothing new. But brands have so much technology and tools and ways to listen and respond. There's almost no excuse not to these days.
And I think customers want to be, like you said, they want to be heard. So at Pink, the Gen Z focused clothing brand, it's actually owned by Victoria's Secret. They heard from all their customers that they wanted this like comfortable bra. They wanted something to last them all day. And so they released this marshmallow bra as a direct result of those asks from customers. And people are excited because they feel like they are directly responsible for creating this product, like that they had a hand in it. And that gives them a little bit more ownership and gives them a little more loyalty with the brand.
Exactly. There's plenty of other examples like that on our list, but I want to move on to the next piece of advice, which is find the right collab partner and say no to the wrong one. Again, collaborations are nothing new, right? We've been writing about them at Ad Age for many years, and they just are constant. But I think you picked out a couple examples again from our winners here that kind of are some best in class ways to do that.
Well, speaking of Pink, they had a big collaboration with Love Shack Fancy last year. Love Shack Fancy is very similar. It's kind of a similar aesthetic to Pink in that they both love pink. They do ruffles. It's like kind of girly girl aesthetic. So a collaboration, but the price points are very different. So a collaboration like that made sense from Pink's perspective, especially because they went into it with one goal, and that was to get new customers. And they did. I think they got like 15% new customers, along with like lines around the block, sell out merchandise, that kind of thing. So that really made sense because they both partners approached it from a perspective of gaining new customers, and the collaboration made sense because they had so many synergies.
Now, one of my favorite brands on the list, and I'm so happy they made it, is Grillo's Pickles, because you and I also put together our marketing winners and losers column every Friday on Ad Age. Grillo's has made that thing several times. It feels like they're constantly like doing fun and interesting things, and it's a pickle brand. But haven't they also done a lot of collaborations?
Yeah, they've done a lot of collaborations. Some I wasn't even aware of. They have this like wacky personality. So some of the collaborations really feed into it, pun intended. They're like super random and they have that like unhinged aspect. And one of those that's doesn't, isn't something you would think of is chapstick, pickle flavored chapstick
Burt's Bees, right? They did
with
something.
Burt's Bees. Yeah, and I actually want to try it because I do love pickle flavoring, but it's not something I think you or I would have ever like dreamed up. And they had like a smoothie collaboration too, again, like really doubling down on the pickles. But one thing they told me was that if a partnership doesn't make sense to them, if they don't see it like following in that wacky personality, or like it doesn't make sense from a similar perspective to what Pink told me, they'll just say no, and they say no all the time.
Yeah, I've heard that in the past and reporting on similar things like this, right? It's just that ability to not say yes to everything, I think is almost one of the most important things you can do in marketing and figuring out what makes sense for your brand. I think if you're a pickle brand though, it's they have a little bit of a license to have some fun, right? It's not a serious, necessarily a serious product.
Pickles are very serious.
You're,
What are you talking about?
you take
The
your
humble
pickles
pickle.
seriously.
They've really elevated the humble pickle. I think we use that
Yes.
line and I love it.
Well, and there, it's a whole nother lesson we won't get into on this episode, but they do a great job with experiential too, right? They do a lot of stuff in New York.
Yeah, they have this activation that only seems to grow and grow
Yeah.
every year.
So we'll save that for another conversation, but I want to move on. The next lesson, remove organizational silos. Again, another thing we hear over and over in multiple contexts. But in the context of hottest brands, who do you think is doing this right?
So one of the brands on our list was Nuuly, and they are the subscription clothing rental brand owned by Urban Outfitters. And they're only a few years old, but they've really grown and are really changing consumer behavior in terms of making it normal to rent clothing, and they've become very popular. And they were telling me that a lot of their marketing is really word of mouth. So if you screw up on the back end with poor customer service, you're kind of done with a customer because they're like, well, that didn't work out. Like, I'm not gonna, continue with this brand. So it's very important that the customer service does a good job. And so to make sure that happens, they've empowered customer service. Like they're able to really make their own decisions of settling customer issues, fixing problems. And they've also integrated them with marketing. So they're constantly checking Reddit and social media and talking to people and publicly fixing problems that customers might have, like, a clothing order didn't arrive or something was damaged or anything like that.
One of the things I love about America's Hottest Brands is it really kind of speaks to kind of the year we're having, not just in marketing, but just sort of overall. And I found it interesting that we had another brand that is a little similar to Nuuly playing in a similar space, and that's Depop, right? Which is the resale platform as well. So this speaks to kind of people wanting, maybe a little bit of economic angle here. Can you just quickly talk about Depop and why they made it?
Yeah, the sustainability aspect of this circular fashion, the resale platforms. Depop is interesting. They've been successful with that. They've also had, speaking of brand partners, they're kind of everywhere sponsoring things often. They just had some stuff going on with Live Nation. And they have a very compelling platform for people looking to buy or sell secondhand of all things, not just clothing, but accessories and other goods as well.
In fact, we had actually four brands on the list that sort of are related to fashion. Coach was also on there, and we already talked about Pink. So again, you can check all those out on the full list. But moving on to one of our final lessons we're going to talk about on this episode, and that is tapping into fan passions. One of the buzzwords of marketing, I feel like in 2026 is fandom. Everyone's kind of throwing that word around, right? But I think that one of the brands we isolated when it comes to successfully tapping into fan passions is Dutch Brothers, the coffee chain. Can you talk about what they did right?
So this coffee chain was interesting to me because they aren't in New York. So I've never actually been to one, but after talking to them, I feel like I'm a lot more familiar with them and their broista baristas, which are like the people who work there have super high energy. They really love to customize drinks for people, which kind of speaks into that fandom. And they also do a lot of these merchandise drops with stickers and cups and tote bags. And this has been a trend we've seen with lots of brands. We've written about this a lot before, where people who are fans of a brand want to show, they want to demonstrate their fandom publicly, like in what they're wearing and what they're showing up with. And Dutch Brothers said that there's these communities out there on Facebook and on social media that are like trading places for the stickers and things like that. And so they really lean into that kind of behavior from their customers.
And these broistas you mentioned, you interviewed, I believe, Debbie Beiswanger, who is the Senior VP of Brand Marketing, Dutch Brothers, and she told me that they, quote, welcome whatever crazy drink you'll throw at them. So it also kind of speaks to this whole customization phase as well, right?
Yeah, and that is also, building relationships with the customer. So you feel like these workers are your friends, that they don't mind if you come up with some crazy like matcha, strawberry, raspberry drink, whereas I feel like some other chains might be a little more limited or might not be as welcoming with such wacky customization off menu kind of ideas.
All right, before we go, Adrian, I already mentioned what I might think is my favorite brand on the list, Grillo's. What were some other brands that caught your eye that you really liked writing about this time?
Oh, I mean, I think, well, you mentioned Coach. I mean, Coach is a great case of a brand that's seeing a resurgence, a brand that's been around for a long time, has seen its share of ups and downs, and has really revitalized its marketing through many things. And they have a circular, sustainability option as well. They're really getting in touch with what Gen Z wants. I mean, my 15-year-old wants all the Coach bags, which is great for her. but not so great because they are not, very inexpensive.
Not
They're
great
not
for your
known for
bank
that.
account.
But I believe she did buy a bag off Depop, a Coach bag. So there you go, kind of this
Maybe she
blending.
wants to stick to NeeDoh. It's a little more budget friendly for you, right?
I don't know. NeeDoh can get expensive too, especially if you buy it secondhand. People will sell those for so much more money than they cost originally. It's kind of crazy. But some of the other brands on the list were also interesting. You talked about Smash Kitchen, which is like that stripped down version of condiments and kind of this everyday grocery items, but with natural ingredients. And I think they're really being elevated through the celebrity backer in Glenn Powell.
It'll be worth watching. I mean, Heinz has been doing such great marketing lately, and obviously a giant. It'll be interesting to see if Smash Kitchen can kind of make a dent into the Heinz market share too. And they sell more than condiments too. I think they recently got into snacks as well. But interesting celebrity brand, right? Sometimes they come and go. We'll see what kind of staying power this one has.
And one last thing about speaking of staying power, one of my favorites on the list also is Costco, which has been around for decades and does like no advertising. They rely on the low prices and their membership model, and that's like they're seeing tons of loyalty. Customers keep coming back. They really are embracing. Like people will post about how they had these like budget finds on Costco. They'll post about it on social media, and then it's really creating a lot of strong sales for them.
Another one that perhaps speaks to the economy as well, but we'll have to leave it there. I think we ticked off nearly all the brands on our list, but if you want to see the full list, again, remind you to check it out at adage.com. Thank you, Adrianne, for your time. Great work on this package. Again, this is EJ Schultz, news editor at Ad Age. Before I leave, I want to give a special thanks to our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite you to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite channel. We will catch you next time.